Chen Qingyuan, who was supposed to have died in the extermination case, was secretly altered by an unknown person to escape the calamity. And a fragment hidden in his swaddling clothes actually hides the secret of changing the world. Chapter 1. Chen Family Orphans. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Beside a ruins. Ah. A man sighed at the child in swaddling clothes in front of him. Most of the swaddle was soaked in stagnant water, and the layers of cotton cloth used for wrapping the body had also soaked most of it. The man's gaze showed a hint of pity as he slowly lifted the child out of his swaddling clothes. A glowing picture scroll was placed under the child's body. Without the cover of the young body, the calligraphy and painting marks on it are revealed. The strokes on the scroll flow like a Milky Way on paper, transforming into various shapes. At the corner of the Milky Way, there is a red star that stands out particularly brightly. The hemp rope is carefully cut, and the child was born here. Have you ever regretted it? The man murmured while holding the baby. Rather than asking, it's more like talking to oneself. Why, if you can bear the hardships in this world, he can't bear them. The woman next to the man joked at him in a mocking tone. Women are obviously not as sentimental as he is. When the person in front of him expressed her sorrow, she only leaned on the nearby tree and closed her eyes to rest. We are all people who sympathize with the same illness. Don't mock me, you. Women are quite indifferent. As she perfunctorily played with the man, she turned the pendant in her hand and said, Okay. Great philanthropist, I just want to remind you that my spell won't last much longer. A beam of light enveloped the baby in the man's hand. After a moment, the man placed the baby back on top of the picture scroll in his swaddling clothes. I have made a slight change in your recent destiny. Life is too long, may you find your own way out. The man finished speaking and waved to the drowsy woman beside him, let's go. As soon as they finished speaking, their figures had disappeared. The trees around the ruins began to shake again, and rainwater dripped slowly to rapidly into the many accumulated pools on the ground, making a crisp sound. The sound of rain awakened the sleeping baby, and he instinctively began to cry. The crying sound alarmed the people searching beside the ruins. The man was holding a long axe in his hand and leaned towards this side step by step. The axe was still stained with a few drops of blood, flowing down with the patter of rain. Tisk, little bastard. The person saw the crying baby and immediately felt restless. He picked up his axe and was about to chop it down. It was your misfortune to be born into the Chen family. Thank me. A beam of light hit his axe. The beam of light was swift and sharp, and in just one shot, it flew the heavy axe several meters away. The axe-wielding man was inexplicably attacked and was easily disarmed without any defense. Even he himself was unstable due to the deviation of his weapon and stumbled several steps to ensure that he did not fall. He quickly went to grab the axe, but it seemed to have life and could not be pulled out no matter how embedded in the ground. Since that's already the case, let him go. It's just a child. The person who attacked him was dressed in simple attire, carrying a long staff diagonally behind his back. Judging from his attire, he should be someone who is good at using spells. The axe-wielding man angrily raised his head, wanting to see who was so inconspicuous and delaying his work. As his gaze focused, the expression on his face changed from anger to surprise and fear. You are Wei Jiefeng. Wei Jiefeng slightly yawned. He is not someone who likes to meddle in his own affairs. Today, encountering such a situation was purely a passing moment and he became restless. Coincidentally, at this critical moment, there was something fate meant. Wei had no intention of being a hero for no reason. Today, he happened to pass by from here, and I think he also had some fate with this son. Since the Chen family has been annihilated by you, why not be merciful and let me take him away? The difference in strength between the person in front of me and myself is too great. If we fight hard, the axe-wielding person knows they have no chance of winning. Since Wei Jiefeng knew that he had killed the Chen family and had not taken any action against him in the first place, he probably had no intention of going through this muddy water. Since that's the case, why don't I sell him face? With this in mind, the axe-wielding man wisely took a few steps back and said, "You should be someone who knows the general picture." Of course. The Chen family in Luozhou has been wiped out. Wei only passed by nearby and did not know the details. Wei Jiefeng said as he picked up his swaddling clothes from the stagnant water. For some reason, as soon as he picked up the baby, the crying stopped and was replaced by a bright and happy smile. "Wei Gong, no wonder I didn't remind you. There are so many implications involved in this matter. If you make such a decision without authorization, it may cause more trouble." A person stood on the nearby ruins at some point. He looked at Wei Jiefeng from a distance and reminded him softly. Wei Jiefeng smiled. He looked at the baby in his arms, with a hint of love in his eyes. Later, disregarding the sewage on the swaddle, he picked up the baby and said, "Sometimes I believe in fate." After speaking, he waved his hand at the person on the wall and then turned around. There was a sudden sound of breaking through the air behind him, and when he turned around, the axe-wielding man had already fallen into a pool of blood. "Jiang Zhizhou has an order, remove all those related to this matter." The person who was just on the wall had already walked slowly to Wei Jiefeng's side. He held a sword in one hand and picked up a leaf with the other to wipe away the new blood stains left on the sword. Wei Jiefeng didn't look at him, just waved his hand again and walked lightly towards the distance. The swordsman did not pursue him. After confirming that there was no other life in the ruins, the swordsman jumped onto the eaves with a single leap. "Cleaned up," he murmured to himself in a low voice. Subsequently, a container wrapped in strange powder fell into the center of the ruins and shattered into pieces. A few wisps of smoke gradually rose from the body of the container under the watering of rainwater. When I regained my senses, the ruins had almost completely dissolved in the heavy rain. Wei Jiefeng had already gone a long way by now. Perhaps tired, the baby has already fallen into a deep sleep. Wei Jiefeng suddenly felt a little regretful at this moment. He didn't have much experience raising children. At this point, we had to take the child back to Qingzhou Academy and discuss it with the others in the academy. But there is one thing he can still complete independently. He lifted the child and leaned closer to his face, saying, "We met on this rainy day, so let's call you Qingyuan." Chapter 2. Years and Clouds at Dusk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qingzhou Academy holds an annual achievement exhibition at the end of each year, which is actually a public plan by various teachers for students who are about to graduate. The teachers and students from various colleges come and go in the hall, it's really lively. For young teachers, this is a crucial time to showcase their teaching achievements to all parties, and they will naturally be extremely attentive, but for senior professors, it has become a painful moment of going through the motions. Wei Jiefeng finally found a place with few people and secretly sat on the chair, preparing to take a nap for a moment. When the conference was about to end, he slipped away. He had just closed his eyes when a voice burst into his ear without a word. "Master, you're slacking off again." Chen Qingyuan leaned over with a bunch of food. "You don't pay attention at this time of year, and I don't know what the unlucky students who study with you think. Are you also one of the unlucky students? Why don't you talk about it yourself first?" Wei Jiefeng reluctantly opened his eyes and grabbed a pack of snacks from the arms of the person next to him. Chen Qingyuan also tore open a bag and said, "It's really difficult to evaluate a bad old man who doesn't work hard." I quoted quotes from several celebrities. Old Wei knows how to play with his broken grass every day when he doesn't work hard. He lives in the botanical garden. This is what Principal Ning Shiyu said. Where is Teacher Wei? This is the most frequently asked sentence by your other students every day. And stop. Wei Jiefeng became more and more agitated as he listened, so he decided not to let him continue. Why are you looking for me? Chen Qingyuan reluctantly stuffed a handful of potato chips into his mouth. If this old man is good anywhere, it's just that his ambition is not strong. Other teachers hope to find a better way out for their students during such times, but they always claim that, my students don't need this kind of referral, and let the students come up with solutions on their own. Although the students he has taught are not mediocre, his attitude is still very unpleasant. Chen Qingyuan leaned back in the chair and lowered his head to swing the potato chip bag in his hand, saying, I'm also going to graduate. Ah. Ah. Wei Jiefeng clearly didn't expect this. Chen Qingyuan gave him a blank glance. Wei Jiefeng felt a bit embarrassed, so he changed the topic for a while to make up for himself and said, have you figured out where you want to go? Chen Qingyuan didn't answer, put down the snacks in his arms and opened his hand. A scroll of books slowly took shape and fell into his hand when it fully took shape. Since he could remember, this painting has been inseparable from him, and as long as he is willing, it can even blend into his palm. He opened the painting scroll, and the flowing Milky Way still shone brightly. 20 years seemed to have never affected this painting. This painting lit up a few days ago. Chen Qingyuan placed his hand on the painting, and the light flowing freely on it instantly had a target, all converging towards his hand. The light kept gathering and finally condensed into a red gemstone that fell into his hand. A new legendary gemstone has been born. Qingyuan, I want to know, are you really ready to collect them? Wei Jiefeng turned his head and looked serious. It is rare for Chen Qingyuan's master to have such a serious expression. The last time he saw it was when he released a barrier out of thin air to cope with the stage exams of the college. Although he later explained to Wei Jiefeng that he had used the scroll hidden inside him as a medium to release the spell, he still couldn't let go of Wei Jiefeng's serious expression at the time. Chen Qingyuan was stopped by a sudden question. In fact, he had no answer in his heart, and he didn't know what this painting meant to him. He just followed the rules and lived aimlessly in Qingzhou Academy for 20 years, just like others, and then, as graduation approached, he, like most students, naturally fell into confusion. Sigh. Wei Jiefeng dropped the snack in his hand and stood up to pat his clothes. Let's go somewhere else. Is the exhibition not over yet? It's okay, I don't have much to do here anyway. Principal Ning will deduct your salary. Wei Jiefeng's buttock sat back on the stool, forget it, where is the responsibility? Chen Qingyuan was speechless. Wei Jiefeng has two major hobbies in his daily life, one is tinkering with various flowers and plants, and the other is accumulating funds for tinkering with flowers and plants. Unless there are significant special events, such as the last time his office desk was in disrepair and suddenly went on strike, shattering several of his flower pots to the point where he had to make time to replace a new desk, almost everything has to make way for these two things. After finally finishing the meeting, Wei Jiefeng stood up and ran away in an instant. I'll wait for you in the office. When Chen Qingyuan regained his senses, the old man didn't even have a shadow left. He put away the picture scroll, tidied up the mess consisting of various packaging bags, and walked quickly towards the Qingming building. Qingzhou Academy is located in a corner of Qingzhou. In order to reduce land area, the academy is designed vertically, and in fact, there are not many places in contact with conventional land. Most of the building clusters are embedded in mid-air. Due to the dean's own aesthetic philosophy, the energy floor slabs used for load-bearing in the air are designed with a cloud-like appearance, making the entire academy seem to float in the clouds. Qingming Tower is in the innermost part of the cloud. Because the atmosphere of the academy is relatively free, the Qingming building, which plays a management role, is not commonly used. Over time, it became the object of temporary rental and transfer for students and teachers who needed to use the classroom for any activities. When there are no activities, most of the time here is empty, and only a few old professors will plant flowers and see the scenery here. Wei Jiefeng is one of them. As one of the few permanent residents of Qingming Tower, one of his hobbies is to plant many strange flowers in every corner of the building. Renting the classroom of Qingming building to students is also a way he came up with in order to show off his flower-growing achievements. However, this is not entirely a good thing for him. Every time there is an activity, he will have several ugly but very expensive plants turned into fertilizer. When this kind of thing happens, he will be so anxious that he will curse loudly and swear never to let the students enter again. Fortunately, the students only choose expensive ones, not rare ones, so they never let him break the defense. The Qingming building has always been able to rent out. Chen Qingyuan pushed open the door to his office, and he was indeed playing with his newly bought flowers there. On the table is an ornamental green cloud bamboo. Although it is bamboo, it is not very long and is a specialty variety of Qingzhou. You came quite quickly, Wei Jiefeng said to Chen Qingyuan while playing with the bamboo. Chen Qingyuan took a few breaths, calmed his breath, and then sarcastically said, "It is said that the fastest legend of the academy is Professor Wei Jiefeng when he rings the bell." This statement truly lives up to its reputation. "Don't say that," Wei Jiefeng quickly interrupted and blocked his mouth. The familiarity between the two is far greater than that of ordinary teachers and students, so when exposed by Chen Qingyuan for a short time, he always feels a bit overwhelmed. Instead of continuing to be criticized by him, it's better to get to the point early and dismiss him. "I'll ask you again, are you ready?" Chapter 3. Thousand Autumn Scrolls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since Pangu created the world, the earth. Don't look at me that way, okay, let me focus. The scroll in your hand is called Qianqiu. In ancient times, various parts of the world fought against each other, and wars and fires scattered throughout the wilderness, making it difficult for people to survive. An unnamed immortal couldn't bear to suffer this calamity, so he devoted all his efforts to writing the book Warning to the World and used it to reshape the world order. It is rumored that those who obtain this book can reconcile time, stir up chaos, and return to normalcy. After achieving a fragile balance among various forces in the world, the nameless immortal exhausted his strength and passed away, leaving only the book Warning to the World in the Luyun Hall. Yes, it is the predecessor of the Luyun Hall that is now floating in mid-air to warn future generations. But with the passage of time, the ancient Luyun Palace experienced war, and the book Jieshi was also divided into 4 parts and scattered throughout the world. From then on, the flowing cloud palace ascended into the air and no longer inquired about ground affairs. What does this have to do with me? Chen Qingyuan couldn't hold his breath. I am truly an old professor who has taught for decades, and when it comes to speaking, it is endless. Don't worry, it's coming soon. Wei Jiefeng was very dissatisfied with the student who interrupted him. The volume in your hand, Qianqiu, has the ability to record Qianqiu and all things. It is a quarter of the book Jieshi. The other 3 volumes are respectively, the mirror, that changes cause and effect and destiny, the gap, that changes time and space, and, observing fire, that manipulates thinking and emotions. These 4 volumes are either of them. If one can understand the mysteries of them, they can turn the world upside down. If all of them are gathered together and reorganized into the divine book of Warning to the World, they have the ability to change the world. The nameless immortal did not anticipate that future generations might use this as a means of wrongdoing, so he deliberately applied a protective mechanism on the divine book. I am not sure exactly what it is, but the fact that the divine book has been scattered for so many years without causing any consequences is the best proof of the protective mechanism. Wei Jiefeng sighed. On the one hand, he is also a teacher and father to Chen Qingyuan, and naturally does not want him to have any accidents with the child he raised on his own. Going into this muddy water is bound to be more ominous than good. On the one hand, he is also a professor at the top university Qingzhou Academy, hoping that his students have the courage to take responsibility and the ambition to save lives. So, that's why I keep asking you repeatedly whether you're ready to search for the lost text in the long scroll of Qianqiu. When you embark on a journey with this, you have to take on an extraordinary responsibility. Even if you don't want to do so, with the legendary gemstone Qianqiu Ri left behind in Qianqiu alone, you can still live this life quite comfortably. Qianqiu Ri is the ruby in the Thousand Autumn Scroll. By stimulating the power of the ruby, he can freely summon flames for his own use. However, he is not proficient in learning, and the flames he awakens are only a small cluster. The type of spell a person can cast is already determined at birth. He is able to use flame spells in addition to his companion spell barrier, which is probably not due to his innate talent, but rather the power of Qianqiu. In fact, Wei Jiefeng had mentioned these words before, intentionally or unintentionally, but he didn't take them to heart. He actually doesn't have any grand ambitions, he just wants to spend his life safely. Suddenly one day, summarizing the previous gossip and telling him that he actually bears the responsibility of saving the world, he felt a bit at a loss. Chen Qingyuan's hand fidgeted restlessly on the table to ease his tension, finally touching the small pot of pitiful Qingzhou bamboo. The poor bamboo quickly turned into chopsticks stuck in the soil. I don't force you to make a decision today. If you're hesitant, why don't you go and take a look at the Joint Investigation Team? The Joint Investigation Team will regularly publicize some commissions from all over the world, which can reflect what is happening in places you can't see around the world. Okay. Anyway, he has nothing to do now. If he can really find the direction of life, it would be a good thing. Can't you help me manage it? Old Wei knows how to play with his broken grass every day when he's not doing anything, so he can live in the botanical garden. Wei Jiefeng closed his eyes and leaned back on his chair. Tisk. The old man is quite vengeful. Chen Qingyuan ignored him and turned his head to push the door out of the office. Before leaving, he glanced at the pot of bamboo that he had accidentally gone bald with his spare light. After leaving, he silently counted 3 in his heart, 2. Chen Qingyuan, get out of here. Do you know how expensive this bamboo pot is? Before I could finish counting, a roar had already sounded from behind. He smiled and trotted out of the Qingming Tower. Before going to the Joint Investigation Team, he still has a place to go. The nearest place to Qingming Tower is Qingzhou Workshop, a weapons workshop affiliated to Qingzhou Academy. Qingzhou Academy, as a school with practical magic as its representative subject, can be considered a widely used and important weapon, or tool. If there is a demand, it will inevitably promote the development of related supporting industries, and workshops are places specifically responsible for production and renovation. Generally speaking, large colleges or organizations will set up their own workshops for the convenience of their members. Due to the fact that things produced in the same workshop may have their own unique characteristics, experienced individuals can determine where a person comes from simply by observing the patterns and workmanship of their weapons. The magic wands produced by Qingzhou Fang, which belongs to Qingzhou Academy, are relatively simple and generally not decorated too much. The presentation of their shape is usually based on the characteristics and habits of the caster, and the inlay of gemstones is mainly practical. The materials used for production are natural minerals, a specialty of Qingzhou. Even without any carving, the overall quality appears smooth and without any sense of simplicity. But a design that is too low-key can also have its own problems, such as appearing very abrupt when inlaid with very bold rubies. Where did you get it from? We probably haven't developed enough to mass-produce legendary gemstones yet, have we? The person in charge of Qingquefang is called Lu Changjun, not a staff member of Qingzhou Academy, but a friend of Wei Jiefeng. Working here is half for help and half for retirement. He looked at the gemstone handed by Chen Qingyuan and couldn't help but ask. Chen Qingyuan does not need other magical tools as a medium for casting spells, but if he always casts spells out of thin air, it will inevitably cause unnecessary misunderstandings. So Wei Jiefeng suggested that he go to the Qingzhou workshop to customize a magical tool to cover up the public's ears. Once before, Wei Jiefeng drank too much and said in a daze that when he graduated in the future, he would reimburse him for the money he needed to renovate a magical tool. Now is a good opportunity to extort him. I picked it up. Chen Qingyuan couldn't explain, so he answered randomly. During the long life of Lu Changjun, he spent most of his time researching legendary gemstones. He designed the 5 standard gemstones of Qingzhou Academy with his own hands. People like him naturally know the difficulty of obtaining legendary gemstones. However, Chen Qingyuan refused to say it, and he wouldn't ask too much. One of the main reasons why he became friends with many students and teachers was that he didn't like to inquire too much. He took Chen Qingyuan's gem and flipped it over a few times, saying, "A legendary ruby from the Twilight Sand Sea. Not bad, you have a chance to get the legendary gem at your age, and there is really great potential in the future." Lu Changjun stood up and took out a book and a small blackboard from the dusty corner, saying, "Teaching each student who has a legendary gem a special lesson is also one of the tasks assigned to me by Old Wei." He gestured for Chen Qingyuan to sit opposite him, and before Chen Qingyuan could agree or refuse, he began to speak on his own. Legendary gemstones usually have their own tendencies. For example, rubies tend to have more attacking and fire attributes, which can be mostly judged by the color of the gemstones. Our modern design of standard gemstones is modeled after this, by refining natural ores of different colors to produce functions similar to legendary gemstones. Although the effect may not be as uniform, when applied to a staff, it can be better adapted to the staff due to its artificial nature, resulting in good results. The specific effect is related to the producer's process. In this regard, the standard gemstones of Qingzhou Academy can be said to be very outstanding, speaking of which, he unconsciously raised his head. But the reason why legendary gemstones are legendary is because there is one thing that standard gemstones can never be replicated, which is the unique characteristics of each gemstone. This characteristic can only be detected after studying or using each gemstone individually. Chen Qingyuan heard it in mist, but he did feel something firsthand. He can easily create flames out of thin air through gemstones, which is definitely not related to his diligence and talent in sleeping and studying. "I remember you don't need a staff, do you?" Lu Changjun suddenly remembered Chen Qingyuan's uniqueness. "So you should be able to present your spells in another form through it. If it were passionate ruby, would it be a flame?" He is truly a mentor-level figure, and Chen Qingyuan admires him immensely. He condensed a small flame in his hand and showed it to Egret Nagayoshi. "It's great, young and promising." Lu Changjun stroked his beard with satisfaction, realizing that he didn't have a beard, so he changed to a chin-pinching gesture. He handed the ruby back to Chen Qingyuan and said, "Tell me, what do you want to transform your small decoration into?" Chen Qingyuan almost forgot his purpose of coming here. He only remembered the real thing after saying so. He handed his ring over and said, "Maybe a little more low-key." Because the crystals on the front end of his magic tool do not have the function of gathering energy, they are just decorations, so as long as they are made simple, try not to make people suspicious. "Okay, I got it." Lu Changjun glanced briefly and then extended the front end of the ring in front of Chen Qingyuan. "It's the same, I'll take it in 2 days." Chen Qingyuan made a cut on his finger and dripped a drop of blood on it. In order to prevent being disarmed in battle or stolen in daily life, blood is usually dropped on it to make it recognized as the owner, which is also considered a form of authentication. Even for small decorations, this program should be followed. Remember to sign on the renovation form when the time comes. If my favorite student comes to me for renovation, Old Wei will definitely be willing to spend money. That's not necessarily true, Chen Qingyuan muttered as he thought of the pair of chopsticks stuck in the flower pot. Chapter 4. Beginners. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The commission on the top of the bulletin board was blown down again by the wind. This is already the 3rd time this commission has been blown away by the wind. The notice board of the Joint Investigation Team has an unwritten rule that commissions will be posted in order of difficulty, from low to high, so that explorers who come to take on commissions can quickly find tasks that suit them. And this one, without specifying the specific compensation or specific requirements for the commission, never knows who posted it, and firmly occupies the top position of the bulletin board from the moment it was posted. Actually, it's not up to anyone else. As a public organization that prioritizes efficiency, the Joint Investigation Team has designed a very rigorous punishment mechanism for reward breach in order to avoid the disturbance of explorers who lack strength but have a strong appetite. Correspondingly, the act of maliciously publishing extremely difficult commissions to defraud breach of contract fines has emerged. So in the face of such ambiguous commissions, all skilled explorers will tacitly choose to ignore them. The staff of the Joint Investigation Team shook their heads helplessly, then picked up the paper from the ground, skillfully applied glue, and prepared to reattach the commission. "Excuse me." A green male voice stopped the staff member's hand that was about to be lifted. "Can I take a look at this commission?" The staff turned their heads and saw a student dressed up looking at them politely. He has neither dust nor scars on his body, and his delicate and tender appearance proves that he has no experience in accepting commissions. "Our rule here is that if you receive the commission paper, it's like you've taken on this commission. If you just want to take a look, let me stick it on first." With the increasing influence of the Joint Investigation Team, there are also more and more newcomers who do not know anything. Repeating these basic rules every day makes her a bit annoyed. "Then you'll take it as if I took it on." Chen Qingyuan really doesn't understand these rules. However, with his excellent performance in both the field of law and tactical planning at school, it is unlikely that he will have any problem taking on any commission. Furthermore, now there is only one commission posted on the wall. In order to quickly return to school and obtain the graduation certificate, it has to be it now. The staff glanced at Chen Qingyuan in surprise. I don't know if it was to give this furry kid a long memory, or if she was too lazy to say much. She swallowed all the words of advice. "The commission has been established, please take your side and I will introduce the principal to you." Chen Qingyuan suddenly felt a little regretful. The Joint Investigation Team has so many people coming and going, and if it were a normal commission, it should have been exposed long ago. This commission was able to hang on until it was blown away by the wind and no one paid attention to it, which can be considered as waiting for me today as the scapegoat. Now, for the sake of face, I don't even know what the commission is, so I took it on. If it were any anti-human task, wouldn't I have to struggle with it? However, even if there are 10,000 regrets, it's too late. This way, please. The staff led him to the door of a room, stuffed the commission paper into his hand, and ran away without looking back, feeling relieved. Chen Qingyuan was somewhat speechless. The Joint Investigation Team has such a great reputation, and I didn't expect the logic to run so simple. It only needs to meet the commission parties together. At this point, he had to grit his teeth and knock on the door. As soon as my hand touched the door, it creaked open on its own. An old man sat in the room eagerly looking at the door. As the door opened wider and wider, the smile on the old man's face gradually disappeared. Until Chen Qingyuan outside the door was completely visible to him, the old man's face completely drooped into a bitter gourd. "Are you the person who took my commission?" The old man's disappointment is beyond words. He wrote his commission obscure enough to prevent those inexperienced kids from causing trouble for him, but in the end, he still waited for a little brat to come. "Ah. Hello." Chen Qingyuan didn't know what to say, so he had to say hello first as a tacit agreement. The old man had planned 10,000 ideas in his heart, hoping to make Chen Qingyuan give up voluntarily. But he glanced lightly and saw a small badge on the chest of the young man in front of him. The badge is not big, and the decoration is also very simple. A small cloud of a simple pen is sandwiched between a half-open book. This is the logo of Qingzhou Academy. Originally a student from Qingzhou Academy. The teaching philosophy of Qingzhou Academy is to give back knowledge to society, so it requires outstanding prospective graduates to submit a practical assignment that represents their level. It seems that the boy in front of me is planning to prove himself by completing the commission. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but want to test Chen Qingyuan's strength. He took out his wand from behind, and the diamond-shaped tip of the catalyst began to emit light at the moment he touched it. A lightning bolt accompanied the surge of energy flow at the top of the staff, surging towards the position of the gate. Unprepared, Chen Qingyuan quickly extended a hand and gathered in front of him to form a semi-curved shield. The shield connects lightning in the ground, causing a significant portion of the energy dissipated by lightning to flow away along the shield, with only a small portion truly impacting the shield. However, due to the sudden incident, he was unprepared and the gathered shields barely prevented the lightning from hitting his body. The energy surging from the lightning still forced him to stumble several steps and almost fall to the ground. The old man widened his eyes. After all, he is old and has more experience. Leaving aside the fact that this child's companion spell is an extremely rare protective spell, it is not easy to quickly react in the event of a surprise attack, and one can also quickly find a way to deal with it. This child's ability to withstand critical situations is also impressive. Undoubtedly, they are students from Qingzhou Academy, known for their practical experience. The old man silently exclaimed in his heart, but refused to let go and said, "Not bad." Tisk. Chen Qingyuan stood still and prepared for battle. Although he is not very good at attacking others, he is still adept at resolving a few moves when fully focused. Let me introduce myself. I am Nan Qingxian, the branch dean of the Star Moon Society. The old man extended a hand and said, "Thank you for taking on my commission. Due to various considerations, I hope to have a deeper understanding of you, which is why I took the initiative to explore. I hope you can understand. As the saying goes, all roads lead to Rome. Every individual in the world is not exactly the same. If someone is good at magic, there must be someone who is not good at magic. People who are good at magic should showcase their strengths, construct and apply various spells to influence the world. Those who are not good at magic should avoid their weaknesses and instead focus on studying mechanical creations or energy sources. Various abilities collaborate and constrain each other, collectively forming this complex world. However, overall, magic remains the most revered mainstream in this world. To condense one's thoughts onto a magical tool in one's hand and drive it to produce various effects is something that requires innate talent. Just the word talent allows everyone in this world, regardless of their background, to be indiscriminately classified as 3rd, 6th, or 9th grade. Whether you are a woodcutter who makes a living by chopping wood or a nobleman who lives a luxurious life, if you lack talent in studying spells or if accompanying spells are useless, you can only seek alternative paths. Even if such a person has achieved great success, they will not receive the most heartfelt recognition from people. There are various accompanying spells, which naturally lead to differences in rank and inferiority. The Star and Moon Society believes that all spells in the world do not come from thin air, but rather from the debris of stars from ancient times. Nowadays, with the development of technology, the natural gemstones embedded in magical tools for amplifying spells were formed by the fragmentation of the Milky Way caused by the collapse of the Warning to the World book during the Great War thousands of years ago, and the debris scattered by the fractured Milky Way. As numerous studies have shown that this theory is quite reasonable, and the influence of the Star-Moon Society continues to expand, spells that can awaken the stars have naturally become the most noble spells. Ah, hello Dean Nan. After hearing Nan Qingxuan's words, Chen Qingyuan felt 10,000 regrets in his heart. In this world, there cannot be a good person in the Star-Moon Society. Not to mention there are big shots with names and surnames inside. If you get involved with such people, you definitely won't have a good ending. He pretended to be calm, barely giving a bow in his hand, but his feet had already begun to unconsciously move outward. I know the reputation of the Star-Moon Society is not very good. Chen Qingyuan's reaction seemed to be as expected by Nan Qingxian. He calmly invited Chen Qingyuan to sit opposite him, as a way to block the retreat of those trying to escape. Please believe that if there is anything I need to use this title to accomplish, with the influence of the Star-Moon Society, I don't have to be here at all. Chen Qingyuan knew he was already a bird in a cage, so he simply followed his words and sat down on the sofa. Two people sat awkwardly, waiting for each other to speak first. Have you read the content of the commission? Chen Qingyuan didn't speak, and Nan Qingxian couldn't find a starting point. He decided to ask a useless question first to ease the awkward atmosphere. The atmosphere has become even more awkward now. He set the difficulty level of his task to the highest, but he didn't expect someone to take it directly without looking at the content. The young man in front of me is indeed not simple. Just a few minutes of entering the door had already surprised him several times in a row. It's okay, it's okay. Nan Qingxian waved his hand, seemingly trying to smooth things out for Chen Qingyuan, but in reality, he was trying to smooth things out for himself. In order to select a capable explorer like you, I deliberately wrote the reward in a bit more obscure. I can describe it in more detail for you. Do you know Flinkham? I've learned a bit. As a top student in the school, he certainly knows Flinkham. This country, located on the westernmost side of the map, has been in the limelight for a few years due to numerous research achievements in the capital city of Fukister, but recently it has been somewhat quiet. Due to the identity of the old man across from him, he plans to appear as humble as possible. There have been some internal issues with Flinkham. Although it may not be a big deal for this rapidly changing world, for me, or someone like me, this is actually a sign. Nan Qingxian took out an envelope from his clothes. The letter contained several photos and a letter. He took the photo out of the envelope and handed it to Chen Qingyuan, then stuffed the letter and envelope back into his clothes. The picture in the photo is very blurry, with large shadows being pulled out, indicating that the person taking the photo is very eager. Chen Qingyuan stared at the blurry image for a long time before finally understanding part of the content of the photo. The shooting location for the photo is the fountain square of Unrestrained Wings. As the fountain square at the center of the capital city of Foster, the designer has created the most famous attraction in Flinkham with sculptures of white doves, flowing water, lilies, and pure white. But in the photo, there is no vitality except for the scattered plant debris waiting to rot on the ground. Is this Forchester Central Square? The scenery in the photo shocked Chen Qingyuan a bit. Although he has never been to Flinkham, from the developed communication network and word of mouth among friends, his perception of Flinkham can be said to be completely unrelated to the one in the photo. That's right. So you want me to investigate the reason here? Chen Qingyuan broke out in a cold sweat. When he thought of himself as an innocent young man who had just stepped out of the school gate, the first thing he did when transitioning from campus to society was to investigate a terrorist event that destroyed the country. He felt that he was no different from dying. No need. The cause of the disaster is a man-made epidemic, and the ability of the Star Moon Society is sufficient to obtain all the information that should be revealed. Chen Qingyuan breathed a sigh of relief. I need you to help me meet the person who spread the epidemic. The exhaled breath came back in. Chen Qingyuan suddenly felt a bit difficult to breathe, and every breath he took in felt like the last one, making him unconsciously increase the frequency of his inhalation. Don't worry, please believe that I can offer a reward worthy of this task. Nan Qingxian lightly tapped on his staff, and a golden gemstone embedded in it fell in response. The brilliance of the gemstone itself lost the suppression of the staff, and suddenly burst into a dazzling light. Light gushed continuously from the cutting edges until the entire room was enveloped by this golden beam of light. If it weren't for what one truly witnessed, one would never have imagined how captivating the charm emanating from a small crystal would be. Chen Qingyuan's understanding of legendary gemstones is actually not profound. He has had such a thing since he could remember, so naturally he wouldn't be too surprised about it. But it wasn't until this dazzling light burst into his eyes that he truly understood why people were flocking to it for a small gem. Chen Qingyuan looked a bit stunned. The Qianqiu scroll hidden in his palm sensed the legendary gemstone nearby, and it also shone rhythmically with his breath. He quickly regained his senses and carried his hand behind him. This legendary topaz is called light gold candle jade. The emerging golden energy declares that it is brilliant, eye-catching and undisguised. I think it is most appropriate to use this gem to symbolize our cooperation. Each legendary gem is a legend in itself, and you can feel the story it wants to express just by looking at it gently. Chen Qingyuan did not answer, even if it was a tacit agreement. He did not avoid the hand extended by Nan Qingxian. Sometimes, people can also try to fight for their occasional desires. Nan Qingxian showed a pleased smile. He retracted the wand that had left a slot behind him, then crossed his hands and placed it on the table, casting a gaze that pierced through the gemstone light at Chen Qingyuan. So, as the beginning of our mutual trust and cooperation, and also a sincere response to my sincerity, could you please explain to me your purpose of accepting the commission and your... Nan Qingxian paused for a moment and shifted his gaze to Chen Qingyuan's hand, which was shining with his back. Excellent magical talent. Chapter 5. Trading and Reunion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mr. Nan, someone is looking for you outside. The staff of the joint investigation team knocked on the door. Chen Qingyuan, who was struggling with how to pass the buck, breathed a sigh of relief. After a few perfunctory sentences, he used the excuse of being inconvenient to bother more and left. Nan Qingxian didn't make things difficult for him either. It's definitely not an ordinary person to specifically find him in such a place. Instead of wasting time on one's own small curiosity, it's better to prepare more for the upcoming big events. By the way, just as Chen Qingyuan was about to leave, Nan Qingxian suddenly called out to him, "Who is your teacher?" "Wei Jiefeng, Professor Wei." "Oh. Wei Jiefeng. Have you ever seen him make a move?" Chen Qingyuan stood in place and reminisced for a long time. "I have known Wei Jiefeng for quite some time, but I have never seen him release even the smallest spell." He shook his head in confusion. Nan Qingxian waved his hand to him, indicating that he was fine. It seems that not only the intelligence network of the Star Moon Society, but even his own students have not seen him take action. It seems that Wei Jiefeng has indeed implemented his principles very well. A teacher who refuses to use spells, and a genius student who can release spells empty-handed. This wonderful combination piqued the old man's interest. Sending one's own commission like this is also a kind of fate. Just as he was sitting on the sofa pondering, a crisp knock came from outside the door. There is no continuity or extra ending, just a gentle sound, as if announcing his arrival to the people inside the room. "Enter." The door opened in response to the sound. "It seems that you are very interested in my students." Wei Jiefeng, dressed in casual clothes and holding a teacup, sat across from Nan Qingxian for a walk. "My students' first assignment was when they got in touch with you from the Star Moon Society. I really don't know if it's luck or misfortune." Wei Jiefeng took a light sip of tea and carefully examined his time for Nan Qingxian sitting opposite him. "How long ago was the last time they met?" 5 years ago. Or 10 years ago. Wei Jiefeng himself couldn't remember clearly, but the person sitting opposite him must still remember vividly. 7 years ago, when we parted ways at Luohuang Mountain, I thought we would never see each other again. You really cared about your students. I have always treated every younger generation as if they were my own. What's even more remarkable about being able to break free from the constraints of magical weapons? His ring is indeed exquisitely crafted, but not yet to the point where it can deceive my eyes. Nan Qingxian is prepared that this sentence will elicit a strong reaction from him. He held one hand on the staff behind him, and the other hand seemed to be at a loss on the table, but in fact, he was prepared for the possible blow. Xiao Chen is indeed exceptionally talented, but he has not yet reached the level you expected. However, children have some impressive talents, which is not new. Wei Jiefeng's calmness exceeded his imagination. He raised the teacup towards the tense hand behind Nan Qingxian, signaling him to relax and saying, "We're all old. I'm not as open-minded as you are. Wei Jiefeng can enjoy a carefree and joyful life, but he is not good at Nan Qingxian. Xuanqing envoy seems to have been a bit anxious lately. Zun Xingshi is a position in the Star and Moon Society, responsible for conveying the will of the president. However, in practical operation, due to the lack of action by the successive presidents of the Star-Moon Society, the honorary Star Envoy became the actual ruler of the entire society, delegating tasks to various branches and monitoring their every move. Wei Jiefeng, don't discuss the matter of the academy recklessly. Nan Qingxian said very seriously, but also a bit nervous. Why, I'm not right. Wei Jiefeng remained expressionless as he spoke, even lazily looking up, as if he was conversing with the teacup in his hand, completely ignoring the person across the table who was in a state of tension. Otherwise, how could Professor Nan have the leisure time to come to such a place and satisfy his little selfish desires? Wei Jiefeng's words were very clever. Firstly, it proves that he is aware of some tricky issues within the Starry Moon Society and has been somewhat lax in their previous surveillance, which was like a trap in the sky and earth. Secondly, it is pointed out that the reward released by Nan Qingxian actually bypassed the academy, which is suspected of dereliction of duty. A gentle sentence made Nan Qingxian vent his anger. Make a transaction. Wei Jiefeng took out a small box from his pocket and handed it to Nan Qingxian. Several beams of light unconsciously flowed out of the cracks in the box, eager to prove their identity. Professor Nan, Qingzhou Academy doesn't have the ambition of the Star-Moon Society after all. They just want to fulfill their duty of teaching and educating in times of chaos, which is enough. Before my student is written on his board by a respected star envoy from the Star-Moon Society, I can stay a bit away from the conflict. So many twists and turns, you really care about him when you give him to me. Nan Qingxian smiled and reached out to take the box, accepting the other party's offer. He's really different, isn't he? Wei Jiefeng did not give a direct answer. He just raised his head slightly and shifted his gaze to the half-section of the staff exposed behind Nan Qingxian. The exposed half of the staff is the front half of the staff, and the crystal at the top greedily sucks the energy surging out of the 4 gemstones embedded nearby, then gathers these energy beams on oneself, forming a halo in circles. Wand of Dharma. The Star-Moon Society has exhausted generations to enslave it completely, ultimately becoming its food. When we parted ways, you joined them for your pursuit. Now that you are in this position, what do you think of it? I don't know. I can see that you have wavered. After speaking, Wei Jiefeng stood up and patted his clothes before leaving. Anyway, I need to know the general situation first. Nan Qingxian stood up and saw him off. Long time no see. Long time no see. Chapter 6. Flinkham. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Flinkham, the sanctuary of the white wings of freedom. The capital city of Foster is famous for its colorful lilies and white doves waving their never-ending wings. In Foster, there will always be the fragrant fragrance of flowers and soaring wings accompanying you every second. At least that's how the external advertising is written. Chen Qingyuan has never been abroad and has no way of verifying the authenticity. He happened to take this opportunity to experience the exotic scenery. Before arriving, his impression of this place was only of incredibly avant-garde science and technology, as well as some popular attractions. He pushed open the portal, and a foul odor instantly filled his nose. He quickly confirmed several times with the traveling mage at Qingzhou Academy before finally realizing the reality. This long-abandoned and muddy-abandoned site was the official teleportation point of Foster. Although he was prepared to become unexpected due to various reasons, such a dilapidated scene still gave him a fierce punch in his psychological endurance. Ouch! Accompanied by a dry vomit, Chen Qingyuan's internal organs were forced to perform a short disco dance. How dare you come to the current Foster without any protective equipment? A person next to him, wearing a protective shield and tightly wrapped, handed him a simple air filter, indicating that he was wearing it on his head. Chen Qingyuan didn't care about anything else and quickly put on the filter. After a while, I barely recovered from suffocation. Chen Qingyuan. Judging from the sound, there should be a woman inside the protective suit. Chen Qingyuan couldn't help but feel curious about this stranger who saved half of his life and met him unilaterally in a foreign land. Do you know me? The woman angrily pointed to the identity authentication next to the portal, which clearly stated his name and some basic information. If you can pass it on, it means that Foster Station 1 is still operating normally. Ah, I'm sorry. Chen Qingyuan felt a bit embarrassed. Focusing on feeling the joy of being reborn and breathing normally, I forgot that teleportation requires identity authentication. What's your purpose in coming here? The woman was too lazy to talk nonsense to him. Nowadays, unlike in the past, the first post station in Foster is no longer bustling with people as usual. There can only be 1 or 2 visitors in a few days now, and it's still being sent to the wrong place. People like Chen Qingyuan who came specifically to Manchester in the past month are also rare. Meet a friend. Friends who have never met before may become friends, and they can also be considered friends. Chen Qingyuan stumbled and his gaze drifted away, lying on his lips. Friend. The woman's tone changed after listening, feeling very incredulous. Do you still have friends in Foster now? I haven't been in touch for a long time. I haven't been able to reach you, I want to see you. Oh my, then you. The woman's tone changed from surprise to regret, and the words on her lips were forcefully swallowed back. She originally wanted Chen Qingyuan to buy a large sum of money for that small filter, in order to create an extra income for her distant family, but now these thoughts have dissipated with that unfinished sentence. Let's go quickly. Foster is not safe now, go early and return early. The heavy protective suit turned around and refocused its energy on the log editing of the transmitter, forcibly terminating the conversation with Chen Qingyuan. What a strange person, Chen Qingyuan thought to himself. But if you work in such a strange place, it would be too normal to be a strange thing. He made his logic self-consistent in his mind, then symbolically pushed open the door that stood in the air without walls, walked from one end to the other, and even left the post station. Today is a cloudy day in Foster. The cloud pressure on a cloudy day is very low, squeezing all the already bad air together, making those breathing under the cloud feel the pressure along with the compressed air. Chen Qingyuan followed the map in 7 twists and turns, avoiding ruins and mud, and finally arrived at a building that was at least intact in appearance. The lamp gold candle jade that Nan Qingxian gave him was too dazzling. As soon as it left Nan Qingshuan's sight, it was stuffed into the 1000 autumn scroll by him. Despite the bumpy journey, he didn't even bother to take it out to look. As he walked along the way, he suddenly realized that there seemed to be a barrier on his body amidst the poisonous gas, so much so that the polluted air would consciously maintain a certain distance from him. Except for a few strong air masses that collided with his arms, he hardly suffered any poisoning. It seems that this lamp gold candle jade contains a purifying or blocking effect, Chen Qingyuan thought to himself. But now I don't have time to understand these things. Wait until I finish my work and return to Qingzhou to study them in detail. Although the building was not damaged, it was covered with strange-shaped vines and plants. The roots of these vines spread out from the back of the building, arbitrarily twisting the sand and stones on the walls into the shape they wanted. Chen Qingyuan felt a bit terrifying. Not only him, but also the mud and sewage on the ground cleverly avoid this place, making the surroundings of this terrifying building appear very clean. He pushed open the door, and a disheveled person was pouring some test tubes in the center of the hall, completely unaware that someone was visiting. Hello. Chen Qingyuan spoke softly, wanting the busy person in front of him to notice his presence. The person who was playing with the test tube was stunned for a moment, carefully placing all the instruments before letting their eyes show through their hair. May I ask who? Yes. Charles. I am the only person worth visiting specifically in Foster right now. Charles is very confident in his influence. He didn't say anything wrong. Chen Qingyuan did come to find him. Before coming, he worked overtime to study about the Flinkham plague. Although there is not much available information, he found it difficult to find the mastermind behind the scenes. He even felt that Kalen seemed to intentionally want to reveal his crimes. After meeting today, he became even more determined in his thoughts. There is an old gentleman who wants to chat with you for a while, but he himself is not very convenient, so he entrusted me to come here. It seems that the old gentleman you mentioned doesn't really want to see me that much. Kalen's put away his smile and prepared to start his experiment again. Please go back. Chen Qingyuan didn't expect such a result. He also wanted to fight for a few more words. You. Before he could make a sound, Kalen's grabbed a small glass bottle from the table and quickly threw it at him. Or prove your value to me. Chen Qingyuan quickly organized his energy to build a barrier. The glass bottle shattered on the barrier with a crisp sound. Nanqing Xian had previously instructed Chao Linsi to be proud and unpredictable, and to be careful when interacting with him. Chen Qingyuan did indeed listen. In addition, with Zhu Yu in front of Nanqing Xian who met last time, he has become accustomed to such incidents of sneak attacks when he met. However, things are obviously not that simple. The glass bottle is not empty, and a light green liquid splashes out with the rupture of the bottle, spreading recklessly on the ground. The area covered by green liquid instantly vaporizes white mist, which quickly spreads in the air, roaring to prove the energy they contain. Kalens watched with great interest as the liquid on the ground flowed towards the place where Chen Qingyuan was standing, and his facial expression became increasingly fierce as the steam increased. He is not sure exactly what these green waters are. But one thing he can be certain of is that if these green waters touch his body, he will definitely suffer. Chen Qingyuan was focused and lit a flame under the shield in front of him. The tiny flames, although not very strong, are still enough to steam the solution before it touches the shield. Chen Qingyuan held his shield and steadily moved forward in the diffuse white mist, until he was able to grab Charles by the collar. Flame, and shield. As a master of various basic spells, I admit you are qualified. Despite his own situation, Kalens laughed and applauded. Tell me, what's the matter with the old gentleman behind you? You are a chemist. The source of the fog has been cleared, and the white mist in the room is gradually dissipating. Chen Qingyuan calmly dispersed the shield. He has rehearsed this set of movements countless times already. He had better preparation before coming than taking the exam, but now that he has finished playing in the exam room, he naturally feels at ease. It can be said that Charles was very satisfied with his reputation spreading abroad. He doesn't actually care whether his reputation is positive or negative, as long as it's big enough. Recipe. As long as you are interested, you can get everything you want in just a few words. This sentence was given to him by Nanqing Xuanjiao. In fact, he had no idea what the so-called formula was, nor did he know what Kalens really wanted. He was only responsible for acting as a messenger actor, making appropriate expressions at the appropriate time to make the entire story appear smooth. Thinking about it this way, he actually felt a bit relaxed. The old gentleman behind you is really knowledgeable. So, did the old gentleman tell you exactly what I want? Charles gave a sly smile. He had already guessed who would be inconvenient to speak these words in person. The performance on the spot is obviously a bit out of bounds for a novice temporary actor. He has several answers in his mind, but experience tells him not to speculate at such times and to remain silent is better. I don't want to make things difficult for you. However, for now, I am more interested in you standing in front of me than the sky-high chips that the old gentleman behind you can offer. Kalens found a chair and gestured for Chen Qingyuan to sit opposite him. Guests from afar, can you introduce yourself? Chen Qingyuan. Belongs to Qingzhou Academy. He originally only wanted to say a name, but felt that it would make him appear a bit arrogant. Although this unkempt person may seem fragile, he is still a demon-level figure who indirectly slaughtered the entire city. He still tries to show his politeness as much as possible. Qingzhou Academy. A great place. But from my understanding, someone else should have appointed you. Please forgive me for the inconvenience. Understand. Those who are hidden in the shadows behind them don't want to expose themselves. It's just a little trick of self-deception. Before we fulfill this adult's wish, please let me solemnly introduce myself. Charles took off his white research suit and grabbed a wrinkled dress from the chair. He slowly changed his clothes under Chen Qingyuan's gaze, and deliberately grabbed several strands of hair with his hands, trying to shape the intricate threads into a shape that could be described in words. Hello, Wildo Cherins. Chapter 7. Deliberate Intention. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Foster Center Laboratory is a comprehensive laboratory. Whether it was the upper-level spells, elements, mechanical structures, or transformations and applications, before the arrival of the plague, this place almost monopolized all the cutting-edge technologies of Flinkham. Of course, it should be the same after the epidemic. The plague almost destroyed all the glory and reputation that Foster had built over nearly a century. Those who were infected with the epidemic had almost no time to react and had already fallen to the ground, waiting for the outcome to turn into mud. And those residents who barely survived the initial signs began to imitate the life of plants, learning to pray for energy from the sun and soil with their limbs. But they are not plants after all, only the transformation of their thinking patterns quickly ended their pitiful lives. Before bidding farewell completely, these plants will use their last bit of strength to shout into the sky, generating more toxic gas to infect others. A photo of this transformation process is hanging on the wall of the central laboratory. Each stage and form is described clearly, and in some places, different colored pens are specifically used for annotation. Chen Qingyuan caught a glimpse and was already shocked and uncomfortable by the content described in the picture. Aren't you curious, who caused such a disaster in Flinkham? Or perhaps for what? Kalen smiled as he waited for Chen Qingyuan to reveal the answer he wanted to know. Chen Qingyuan felt a pang of nausea as he was tormented by this pervert in front of him. He didn't know how to answer, so he asked back, in your opinion, should I be curious? You should be curious. Charles didn't know when he had switched back to his slightly stained white research uniform. He took out a small strip of reagent from his chest pocket and forcefully smashed his arm onto the nearby wall. The test tube bottle cracked in response to the sound. In just a moment, the green solution melted all the vines residing on the wall, leaving only the wall with a large hole etched out, indicating a tragic incident against the wall plants that had just occurred here. The areas around the large hole that have been slightly corroded by the solution have sprouted new vines as if they have vitality. These vines have more vitality than the initial ones, waving their teeth and claws in the air. Chen Qingyuan was sweating profusely as he watched. He felt a chill just as he recalled a bottle of this thing being thrown at him earlier. I didn't expect the first thing I did when I walked out of campus to take care of it to be so terrifying, and he couldn't even think of any bad things waiting for me afterwards. The formula you need is in the bottle. The destructive effect is immediate, and with just a gentle touch, irreversible consequences can occur. Adjusting its concentration will produce a completely different effect, whether it is destructive or new, it is entirely up to me. This cross-era product was developed by me, and it has been my decades of research effort. Kalens looked at the reagent bottle with a satisfied smile, as if taking care of his own children. With a smile, he suddenly lowered his face and showed a regretful expression. Unfortunately, it's not perfect enough. Just like your little flame can burn them all up, it's too fragile. So you used the entire citizens of Fucaster for the experiment? Yes. Of course it is. Don't you think it's really worth it? Charles looked grim. What are those people worth in front of my research? They are all stairs to progress and necessary sacrifices. They will be remembered in the future, but not now. People now just need to remember my name, bend down, and then look up to praise my achievements and name. You're crazy. Chen Qingyuan quickly retreated several steps, keeping a distance from the madman in front of him. A person in this mental state can do anything, and suddenly pulling him may lead to self-destruction. Am I crazy? Kalens put away his previous madness, sorted out his messy clothes, and then pulled over a chair to sit on. The performance just now consumed too much of his energy. Scientists should be crazy, especially in places like Fucaster where science is the foundation of the city, isn't it? We are all just chess pieces. Only by realizing this first can we break free from constraints and redefine ourselves. Kalens looked at Chen Qingyuan with a smile on his face. So, where are you another chess piece placed? The sudden restoration of normal language actually made Chen Qingyuan somewhat uncomfortable. He couldn't understand what medicine the person in front of him was selling in his gourd, and out of caution, he didn't dare to act rashly, so he froze in place. Charles turned around and said, "You still have time, and I don't have much left. When you think it through, come to the black room and find me." As soon as he finished speaking, the vines attached to the walls on both sides surged towards him like flying. Chen Qingyuan had to retreat repeatedly until he retreated outside the laboratory. He had just exited the threshold when the thick vines sealed the entrance. Subsequently, a burst of lively music came from within the vine. The song is pure music without any lyrics. In the fast-paced melody, there seems to be a hint of sadness mixed in. Most of the buildings at the Foster Center Research Institute have also been damaged. The surrounding building areas, which were supposed to be buildings, no longer exist at all, leaving only some broken bricks and some struggling weeds. If it weren't for a beautifully crafted small sign under the vines winding around the roof, he wouldn't have been able to prove that this was once a magnificent research institute even if he had explored the ruins 10 times more. Chen Qingyuan had no choice but to walk back in frustration. Kalens had no idea where the black hall he referred to was, and he didn't even know that he had no clue about those vague questions. Instead of wandering around like headless flies in this poisonous place, it's better to go back to the academy to search for some information and make some preparations. On the way back, he kept thinking about the endless words that Kalens had just said. If Kalens felt that his experimental results were fragile and flawed, how did he let the plague spread so recklessly in this area without knowing the solution? Chen Qingyuan felt like he had been deceived into something really wrong. At first, he was just asked to be a messenger to take a message for the old guy with ulterior motives. As a result, it developed and became voluntary to investigate the truth about the epidemic. Previously, Wei Jifen once sighed to him that life is a forced struggle amidst various compromises. He still couldn't understand, but now he has fully understood. From the moment he walked out, a circle of clean air surrounded him with golden candles and jade lamps. Due to the fact that the toxic gases permeating the air were not colorless, this small circle of purified air appeared visible to the naked eye, making Chen Qingyuan feel as if he had some halo blessing on him. There hasn't been much progress in my work, and I don't have much to do when I go back now. It's better to take a walk around and carefully understand the situation here. He remembered the fountain square in the photo. According to the map, the fountain square is not far from the Central Research Institute, so he decided to go there first to take a look. The map is not deceiving, it is indeed not far apart. Especially after the buildings that should have been bypassed have turned into ruins, the curved path becomes a straight path. He only needs to flip over a pile of stones up and down to easily reach his destination. The scenery along the way was so monotonous that if he hadn't seen a statue still spraying water from afar, he wouldn't have realized he had reached the fountain square. The wings on the square of the unrestrained wings fountain have disappeared without a trace. Even the wings of the white dove statue in the middle, which tirelessly sprays water outside, have been destroyed, leaving only a tattered trunk to maintain the function of the fountain's water spraying. Along the way, Chen Qingyuan did not see any living or even dead people. The whole city is surprisingly quiet, except for the sound of water flowing from the fountain in the pool. Even the passing wind refuses to speak up and give away a few notes. He cautiously approached the fountain. The spring water is not clean, but in the gray background, it also appears relatively clean. Chen Qingyuan stood next to the fountain and looked for a while, but didn't notice anything unusual. Everyone has come. Even if they come up with meaningless conclusions, they can still be used to perfunctorily assign their own tasks. Being immersed in the academy every day, he deeply understands that even useless work can become useful work. So he decided to try some of the spring water and see if it was as clean as they appeared. He mobilized the magic within his body to gather a small red light on his left hand, and with a gentle push, the light turned into a small, dense flame, shooting straight into the nearby pool of water. The pool instantly emitted white smoke. Through waves of white smoke, Chen Qingyuan saw some fine black crystals falling from the surface of the water where it came into contact with the flames. He felt something was wrong, so he put away the flames and put a small shield on his finger, then tentatively extended it into the water. Just as he came into contact with the water, the shield began to crack, which scared him to quickly retract his hand. "No," Chen Qingyuan muttered in a low voice. This type of water containing black crystal structures has indescribable corrosiveness. Rather than being corrosive, it is more of a decomposing energy. Black lunar mass. Some small energy particles can generate such powerful power. What's even more magical is that these energy particles seem to have their own thoughts and can be selectively released. When they dissolve in water, they temporarily remain silent, but once they come to other places with the water, then. Charles didn't know when he had also arrived here. The white clothes stood out in the gray pile of stones. Black lunar mass is something that stars and moons learn. You are deliberately guiding me. Chen Qingyuan became vigilant. The person in front of him not only accurately found his position, but also seemed to have prepared the content introduced to him long ago. Kalens was stunned for a moment, then chuckled and said, "Didn't I take the initiative to tell you and let you discover all of this for yourself? You would feel more fulfilled." Chen Qingyuan fell silent. Charles took out a bag from his pocket, which contained a small amount of black lunar material. The moon in the bag kept surging, trying to break free or destroy the bag, but the result seemed futile. He gently threw the bag in the direction of Chen Qingyuan, and Chen Qingyuan caught it. "If you don't speak, I might as well guide you again. The bag is specially made by me." After speaking, Kalens turned his head and walked away unsteadily. He walked leisurely in the courtyard, as if strolling through his backyard. Kalens seemed to have completely grasped his thoughts. He himself had doubts about Nan Qingxuan's motives, and for what reason was it that he had to bypass the Star Moon Society and investigate this matter in his personal capacity? Now he has no reason to refuse the evidence presented before him. The fountain is still constantly releasing its vitality outward. Chen Qingyuan dodged the splashing water droplets and quickly walked towards the post station with a trembling small bag. Chapter 8. Decision-making. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Please allow me to ask you. What kind of organization should the Star Moon Society be in your eyes? Is it standing at the peak of many truths and knowledge, generously donating to every faithful believer, or standing at the peak of power, guiding everyone with unparalleled foresight? Unfortunately, none of them. The Star Moon Society is an extremely dirty place, a place where dirt and dirt are hidden, a place where we do anything for a certain purpose. But it is because of this that we are able to survive in chaotic times, establish our foothold in countless barriers and barriers. As long as you have unfinished ambitions, show your value to the Star Moon Society. Then borrow our hands and use any means you can think of to achieve it. Ji Shi, the 20th president of the Star Moon Society, gave a public speech at Luohuang Mountain in the 12th year of the Qingguang reign. The water of the artificial waterfall flows down with a clatter. The waterfall hit the clouds, splashing with splashes of water. Chen Qingyuan sat on the bench, staring at the waterfall in a daze. I just wanted to complete my graduation task, but I didn't expect to get involved in such a dangerous situation. It's just a breach of contract, these things that shouldn't have any intersection with oneself, why take such a big risk, and the ultimate loss is not worth it. An inexplicable emotion was hindering his retreat. He remembered his past and felt sarcastic. I don't have the ability like Mr. Wei, he sighed lightly. What do you call me? Wei Jiefeng stood behind him at some point, with his arms resting on the back of the bench, interested in watching the waterfall with Chen Qingyuan. Ah! Chen Qingyuan was startled and forgot to argue for a moment. When the school was first built, many teachers and experts opposed building an artificial waterfall in this area. Firstly, it was just a decoration, with no practical significance. Secondly, it was very troublesome, time-consuming, and labor-intensive. This kind of waterfall hanging in mid-air was a hidden danger for everyone. Wei Jiefeng walked around to the front of his chair and sat next to Chen Qingyuan, looking at the waterfall. He told the story to himself, but Mr. Ning, the dean of Qingzhou Academy, Ning Shiyu, insisted on building it. At that time, he said, "Friends, there are not so many things in the world that need meaning." The dean said so, and no matter how many opposing voices there were, they fell silent. After all, building a college is not something they pay for. In short, the waterfall was finally built as expected. Over the years, the waterfall has had no effect and often splashes water on the passing teachers and students. However, the chairs around it have never been empty. Do you think I should give up? Chen Qingyuan, who had been silent all along, spoke up. It's up to you. If you need it, I can give you the green light anytime. After a moment of silence, Chen Qingyuan shook his head. I'll try again. Wei Jiefeng was somewhat pleased. However, in addition to being relieved, he also had a very important matter to ask Chen Qingyuan. Guess why I came to see you? Ah. The bill from Qingquefang was delivered to me this afternoon. Also, you broke a basin of bamboo into chopsticks a few days ago, and you just spoke ill of me behind my back. Before the words could be finished, the person on the chair had already run away without a trace. Wei Jiefeng angrily grabbed a stone and threw it into the waterfall. As a result, the splashed water covered my face. Little rabbit. He smiled and shook his head. Chen Qingyuan ran into the library of the academy in one breath. Since he has decided to proceed with this matter, he must first understand the history of the Star Moon Society in making and using black lunar material. Perhaps commonalities with this incident can be found from the traces of their past actions. It should be said that his direction of thinking about the problem is very correct. He fought hard in the library all night, and when it was almost dawn, he found a file specifically recording human events that caused significant harm. Chen Qingyuan quickly found the corresponding file according to the index. This file is very clean, appearing somewhat abrupt amidst a pile of dusty files, as if someone had just flipped through it not long ago. He took down the file and searched through it in detail page by page. One of the pages reads, "The application of black moon in carpet-like military operations." It provides a detailed introduction to every step of using the adhesion and killing power of black lunar material to quickly eliminate hostile forces, but lacks results. On the last page of the file, there is a piece of handwritten lettering sandwiched between them. Desiree is not a stepping stone for you to climb, Dr. Hash. As you soar towards boundless ambition, please remember that you were also one of those innocent victims. There were only these few words on the paper, and the signature at the bottom should have been a name, but it is unknown who tore it off. Chen Qingyuan realized that the torn name was likely the key to finding the culprit. But all the clues remain on this residual page, and there is no useful information beyond that. He felt a bit confused for a moment and stared at the missing corner of the letter, then became stunned. Lenijai Seklos, the female mayor of Desire, was also the last mayor. A female voice pulled him out of his chaotic thoughts. The source of the voice saw that Chen Qingyuan noticed him, so he took the initiative to approach and greet him, Zhu Yuning. Chen Qingyuan. How did you know about this letter? He pointed to the missing corner of the letter. The exhaustion of staying up all night no longer allowed him to concentrate well. In a daze, he forgot some etiquette for the answer and immediately blurted out his doubts, completely ignoring the fact that the two were not familiar with each other. I grew up in Sangyan since I was young, and I have been away from home for too long. Sometimes, I feel a bit dazed. However, even if I change my head and surname, some things won't be forgotten. I was born in Desiree, and when I was young, they called me Ivina Seklos. So the mayor you just mentioned. It's my mother. Ah, I'm sorry. For some reason, Chen Qingyuan felt an indescribable sense of guilt. Please don't show such an expression, she is still healthy and alive. Zhu Yuning was afraid that he might think in a strange direction, so she quickly interrupted his scattered thoughts. Sorry. If not, based solely on the fragmented information he learned, Chen Qingyuan really thought that the lady was no longer alive. His thoughts were seen through, so he had to apologize again to cover up his embarrassment. But this whole thing. Instead, it has made him somewhat sober now. Miss Zhu, with all due respect, how much more do you know about your mother's termination of this experimental research? Don't be so polite, it makes me look very old-fashioned. We are peers, Zhu Yuning glanced at him. Compared to the sour smell of Chen Qingyuan speaking when he was sober now, she was clearly better able to adapt to his rambling state. I don't know much. However, one thing I am very clear about is that after Desalee's re-administrative planning, the new authorities must still be conducting relevant research. Why? Because of that, Dr. That's right. After the restructuring of Desire, the new administrative system was composed of 16 scientists who were completely ignorant of politics. In this way, they freed themselves from all the constraints and unleashed their so-called talents to the fullest. It is undeniable that they did make many remarkable achievements, but their unrestricted madness ultimately led to destruction. Chen Qingyuan realized that it was necessary for him to go to this scientist-led Desire to explore the truth. Fulchester, where Charles is located, is also based on science. If we could find their commonalities, things would definitely be much simpler. Before Zhu Yuning could finish speaking, he eagerly asked, where is Desiree? In order to demonstrate their importance to this new model of scientist governance, the central government of Flinkham even elevated him to the nominal capital. Nowadays, people generally refer to him as Foster. Chapter 9. Ruins of the Past. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 10. Black Room. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. There is also a fountain at the entrance of the city government in the front yard of this black building. The fountain tirelessly sprayed water. The two of them crossed piles of ruins and stood in front of the fountain. Chen Qingyuan waved his protective suit and made a gesture, indicating that Zhu Yuning should stay away from the fountain water. A path leading to the building was cleared behind the fountain. The building at the end of the road is surrounded by various bricks and tiles, appearing very abrupt. Charles stood behind the fountain, staring at the brick and tile in a daze. The water from the fountain splashed on his white coat, leaving shallow marks. Since Charles is here, it means that this building is a black hole. What are we doing here? Chen Qingyuan took the lead in asking, as he now has too many questions to understand. I would like to hear your thoughts first, Charles turned around and asked in reverse. He wore a very special badge on his body, which looked particularly dazzling under the moonlight. There's progress. But I need you to give me some information. Speak up. How much do you know about Desire's previous biochemical weapon tests? Kalins paused for a moment and then showed a satisfied smile. This moment was keenly captured by Chen Qingyuan. It seems that his guess is correct. Are you one of the 16 scientific consuls? Zhu Yuning glanced at the badge on Kalen's white dress chest and exclaimed in surprise. No wonder he was a bit familiar with this name before. The 6th seat, and the only one now. Charles bowed to her and said, Miss, greetings to you. Ah. All other scientific consuls were killed in the cleanup of the Central Research Institute by the Starry Moon Society, and only I survived due to an external visit. I have never understood. Even though you have more important information, you still refuse to tell me the whole picture. Chen Qingyuan was a bit angry. It is difficult to continue cooperation without mutual trust. So, do you trust me? Due to your various behaviors, as of now, I completely distrust you. I treat you the same way, Charles said calmly. Besides, there isn't much cooperation between us. You're satisfying your curiosity, and I'm looking for my prey. At best, we can only be considered to be using each other, right? Consul, for whatever reason, the destruction of Foster has become a fact. As one of the leaders, you are inevitably to blame, and now you are also making things difficult for me. Who have come to investigate the truth. I strongly doubt your intentions, Zhu Yuning said sternly. Dear Ivina, please do not question my loyalty to Foster. Do you know me? Zhu Yuning was startled. Don't be surprised, miss, it's just like you know me. Before leaving, Ms. Seklos laid a lot of groundwork for your network. Unfortunately, the development of things is so sudden and unexpected. Kalen smiled and said, you haven't become like a Flinkham person anymore, but there are some things that cannot be erased. Okay. Since you know me, our negotiations will be more convenient, Zhu Yuning adjusted her tone. Consul, we should be more honest. You are very similar to your mother. I still hold emotions towards this land that has been separated for a long time, as it has given birth to my mission to come again. Consul, you should shoulder more responsibility than I do. Miss Seklos, you have a natural talent for giving speeches. However, your tongue doesn't bring about any substantial changes. Kalen stood up holding the brick and patted the dust on his body. Come with me. Kalens walked quickly alone in front, while Chen Qingyuan and Zhu Yuning deliberately kept a certain distance from him behind. Charles noticed it, but he didn't mind too much. I didn't expect you to be so dominant, Chen Qingyuan whispered. What's this? I'm from our academy at Qingzhou Academy. Zhu Yuning coughed and said, high-achieving students. Which hospital are you from? Chen Qingyuan decided to go back and investigate. He had never heard of such a number one person before. Zhu Yuning recognized his meaning and didn't intend to hide it. I'm from the Imperial Academy. You guys who study practical skills and us who study paper things don't communicate much, so it's normal not to know me. Jianyuan is the School of Classics and Inheritance, with Ning Shiyu as the dean. Although Chen Qingyuan does not know Zhu Yuning, the status of the college in Qingzhou Academy is still very high. After all, the dean also serves as the president. Have you heard of me before? Chen Qingyuan felt a bit strange about how she knew she was studying practical combat. Ah. Every time Dean Wei comes to drag Dean Ning out for a drink, he mentions you more frequently than his expense report in his casual conversation. That's quite a lot, Chen Qingyuan thought to himself. Charles stood in front of the main entrance of the Black Hall. Although the building is somewhat dilapidated, the black walls and remaining relief sculptures still hold their heads high, signaling to visitors his once noble identity. Its gate seems to have ignored the devastation and still maintains its intact appearance. Charles extended his hand towards the black building's entrance, and a beam of light shot out from the door, covering his hand. After a brief silence, the heavy door made a muffled sound, revealing its back to the person in front of it. This is the Black Hall. The more official statement is that the Foster Joint Council Hall. The city government is only superficial, and all major decisions first come from the Black Hall. The lights in the Black Hall lit up step by step with the sound, indicating that the internal facilities were not damaged by external turbulence. Charles deftly fiddled with the things on the table, pouring out a cup of hot water from a kettle. Make a cup of coffee before calling the meeting. It's your mother's habit. She hasn't been drinking coffee for a long time. After leaving Desire, she quit coffee. And you? Charles pushed 2 cups of brewed coffee in front of them. I'm the same. Zhu Yuning pushed the cup back a bit. Kalen smiled and casually pulled a chair to sit down. Take off your protective suit, there won't be any pollution in the black room, he said. The 2 obediently took off their protective suits. Chen Qingyuan has the protection of lamps, gold, candles, and jade, so taking off the protective clothing that is just a decoration naturally won't have any concerns. Zhu Yuning is very familiar with the interior of the Black Hall. The predecessor of the Black Hall was where she grew up, and the decoration inside has hardly changed. She is well aware that the internal purification system of the Black Room is absolutely trustworthy. Mr. Zhu is indeed very charismatic. I met him a few times when your mother was still in foster. Kalens picked up a glass of water and took a sip, indicating that he himself did not like coffee. Let's get down to business. How much do you know about the Black Room? Kalens asked. If you're talking about the Central Council of Desili, perhaps I can talk to you for a few words. Zhu Yuning expressed her impatience tactfully. Let me be frank. Charles put the cup back on the table. According to the initial plan, there should be 16 consuls, divided into 8 seats, top and bottom, to coordinate and cooperate with each other. But that's where the problem lies. Since the establishment of Foster, there have been only 15 people in the 16 seats, and 1 seat in the bottom 8 seats has always been empty. Zhu Yuning has some understanding of these things, while Chen Qingyuan has no understanding at all. Now he listens to every word extremely attentively, afraid of missing a sentence that may lead to a deviation in his analysis of the current situation. I don't have to be so serious during class, Chen Qingyuan muttered to himself, but his ears didn't dare to slack off. This resulted in the top 8 seats having decisive decision-making power. After discussion, we ultimately decided to let the 8th seat stand independently to balance the relationship between the top and bottom seats. If the opinions of the upper and lower seats within you can remain consistent, doesn't this 8th seat equivalent to having substantive decision-making power? Chen Qingyuan asked. That's right. With a tendency to align with his ambition, the 8th seat of the scientific administrator gradually replaced the chief as the center of decision-making. It is undeniable that Ms. Hash's abilities match his desire for power. Under his planning, Foster quickly entered the mainstream worldview. Hashi. Chen Qingyuan remembered the file and his eyes immediately became sharp. He was pushed by you living people to fulfill his unfulfilled wishes from the dead back then. How ironic. Zhu Yuning sneered, he's not the only one who remembers. Charles ignored the mockery and said to himself, Ms. Hash has a firm saying, the result has the right to define the process. He is a person who does whatever it takes to achieve his goal. If Dr. Hash is also a member of the Science Council, then he is highly likely to bear considerable responsibility for this event. He had studied the application of the Black Moon as early as 16 years ago. Chen Qingyuan interjected in a timely manner, but I also want to remind you that the various signs inside your laboratory indicate that you were not unaware of Hash's research. Charles was completely indifferent. Of course I knew. I can also be honest with both of you, I participated in most of his experiments. Except for the part where he collaborated with the Star Moon Society. Exactly. Black Moon Mass is a top-secret technology of the Star and Moon Society. Except for those who have learned it, it is difficult for ordinary people to know its existence, let alone research. Dr. Hash should have been a core member of the Star and Moon Society before becoming a consul. The Star and Moon Society places more emphasis on personal value rather than national interests, and with different basic positions, he also has little emotional attachment to Manchester. Chen Qingyuan blurted out his conclusion. The eighth scientific console, Symes hash, deliberately amplified a certain link for some purpose to trigger this disaster. You are very smart, truly a student of Wei Jiefeng. While Chen Qingyuan was investigating these things, Kalins was also investigating him. When they first met, he revealed that he came from Qingzhou Academy, and it was not difficult to know who he was worshipping, and Chen Qingyuan was not surprised. But there is one thing I need to correct you. I don't need to guide you to understand anything, but in this ruins, what you see may not necessarily be what you get. Both of you, I can feel the drastic changes that have occurred in this land over the past decade more than you can. At this point, I have to admit that the era that belonged to Forchester has come to an end. Unbounded radicalism is not the cure for this land. Afterwards, I will submit materials to the central government of Flinkham to apply for Forchester to be changed back to desire. Charles took out a small bottle from his chest pocket, with a small piece of paper attached to it. He handed the small bottle to Chen Qingyuan and said, "This is the formula you need, and I am more accustomed to calling it rebirth. It can quickly compress and burst into vitality in a short period of time. The creatures that come into contact with these green liquids will corrode their bodies and reshape them into short-lived but dynamic plants. The plague that Foster called, but it is just the spread of this thing. Its super-efficient energy conversion efficiency has brought endless energy and the qualification to always be one step ahead of this rapidly changing city, turning it into a dead city. Life is really a drama, isn't it?" Chen Qingyuan took the small bottle. The pale green liquid churned in the bottle as if it was about to come out at any moment. "Have I ever said that before becoming a consul, I was a scientist in charge of agriculture? Are the lives you speak of the ones you see? You are just thousands of miles away, constructing their tragic situations in your heart through fragmented information, using a series of cold numbers to imagine their experiences. I am different. Before becoming a consul, I was one of these numbers. After becoming a consul, there is no difference. In terms of value, if it is not for the sake of being a tiny fellow cell like me, why would I have to spend my whole life researching and exploring? Necessary sacrifices are a very good thing. An excuse, but it's just an excuse. Of course, no matter how big or small one is, there should be no motive or reason for doing evil. So when you found me, your ignorant appearance helped me find a way out for a life full of sin. A lost life will not be reborn by my own repentance, and those who indulge in my achievements do not need to argue for me. The scientist who stayed up all night for several days to make slight changes in crop yields, becoming an accomplice to destruction. I have changed a lot. In this regard, Dr. Hash is even far superior to me. He is very determined," said Charles with a self-deprecating smile. "Why did the rebirth potion you developed leak?" Chen Qingyuan felt both dangerous and puzzled. "And why did you bring us here?" "Actually, what you're asking is a question. In Flinkham, the Anti-Seclusion Bureau is qualified and capable of investigating everything. If the Anti-Seclusion Bureau does not take action, it means that the Central Army has tacitly agreed to everything, not that they are unaware. Disaster is a complete scam, with only one person possessing such a large scope and the ability to spread so quickly. We are all his marionettes, and the only difference is that whoever hangs their finger first will be eliminated." "You." Charles interrupted his words. "The design of the Black Hall is very interesting. The central round table has 16 chairs, each representing a consul. Except for these 16, no one can open the door of the Black Hall. In addition, the special design of the Black Hall makes the content of discussions in the Black Hall a top secret that will never be known if the parties are willing. As you have just seen, only the consul's identification code can activate the door of the Black Hall. If the consul passes away, the corresponding identification will be invalid, and the seat representing him will also crack in response." Speaking of which, Zhu Yuning glanced around. In the shadow of the light, there is a stack of inverted chairs and a pile of furniture fragments. Except for the chairs where the three of them were sitting, all other positions where chairs should be placed were empty. That is to say, 3 consuls are still alive. Chief Executive Levy had already submitted his resignation to the central government 6 months before the outbreak of the so-called epidemic, but had not received a response. However, he clearly did not care so much and had already left Foster. I am a selfish gambler. Charles pulled out a document from the table and placed the brooch on it, pushing it towards the two of them. I want to make my final bet.